Hello, fellow travellers of interstellar space who just so happen to be in need of a good solarium. My name is Andrew Nobbins, and this is walkthrough number 16 of my virtual reality project featuring the sets from Space 1999. This update includes two huge additions in the form of the solarium and the nuclear generating area from the TV show. Before we look at the solarium though, let's just exit into the corridor and look at some of the screenshots from the TV show that led to me even attempting to model the solarium. So if I bring up the menu by pressing the top left button on my left controller and then I press the screenshots button, here we see a screenshot showing the entry to the solarium, and then if we look in the opposite direction we see the rear view of the corridor that leads to the solarium. Now if you look closely, this looks suspiciously similar to the corridor in the main mission set. And it even has the mark on the ceiling where the main mission set had the comms post coming down the middle of this intersection here. And then if we look back here, you can even see the mark on the ceiling where there was a comms post over here in the corner of the main mission corridor. And in that corridor, there were two video booths there, but they're not present in this shot here. So my journey with these new environments started off with me looking at Firstly, actually, it started off with me looking at, over here, I have the computer room, which you'll notice I've moved out of the main mission set and placed it into this new scene that includes the computer room, the solarium, and the nuclear generating area. But I first started off noticing that the computer room had a corridor coming out which was different to what I had in the main mission set. I previously had this computer room attached to one of the side corridors in the main mission set. So if I go into the computer room, which we've all seen before, now mind you, I have changed the floor. Previously I had the floor as the tan floor, as you see in those images there, but I changed it to the origin floor that you see in these later scenes or later episodes of Space 1999. So if we go in here and look at this new additional screenshot that I added, we're looking out of the door and we can see that the corridor is in this configuration with a comms post with the letter P on it. And so that corridor out there reflects what we see through this door here. So I thought, okay, I do need to change the layout of the corridor outside of the computer room to match these photos. And I couldn't do that in the main mission set, and that's what spurred me on to creating this new scene featuring the computer room with a corrected corridor. Now in this photo here, you can see the blue sign and you can see there's a wall section that returns. And that's pretty much all the information I had, including the information from this photo here. Which just shows that far wall, but it doesn't really show what happens to the left and to the right. So I did have to make up, but I did it to a minimal extent. So I had that going off to the left and just terminating like that. And I added this video booths in a similar configuration to what we saw in the previous corridor. So if we go down here and just look back here, in the main mission set corridor, there was a comms post coming off there, and then there were two video booths there with those slotted wall panels either side. So I kind of thought that maybe the same thing happened with this configuration. So we've got those slotted wall panels, we've got the comms post, and then the video booths. So that's the rationale for me including the video booths there, and then what happens in that direction, we don't know. But then I did further research and found this corridor leading to the solarium, and then finally I found the corridor that leads to the nuclear generating area, which I have down in this area here. So I found myself with three corridors leading to three environments, and I had to somehow join them together Lego style, and this is what I came up with. So this corridor leading to the nuclear generating area, which we can see down there, And as we can see in this screenshot, so here we have those video booths again. We don't know what's happening to the left there, but in some of these other photos, we can see that this is sort of a cross intersection here with stuff happening off in that direction, and we don't really know what's happening off in that direction. But then if we look in the reverse direction, we can see that we have that concave corner into the right there with the letter H in it. And then as you go around the corner here, there's this door that opens up somewhere. And then that, we just don't know where that goes. But I've just put that door terminating the corridor there. So I had these 3 corridors, and I played with different configurations to join them all together, and this is what I finally came up with. So if we go through that door that's shown in the earlier photo, it takes us to this main Solarium corridor. And the Solarium corridor this way, which we don't know what the Solarium corridor does in this direction, but I've joined it to the corridor that goes to the nuclear generating area. And so we know that something happens there, but how this joins up to anything, we don't know. But that's enough of corridor talk. Let's just turn off the screenshots and investigate the Solarium. So here we have the entrance to the Solarium. Now, one of the things that I'm very aware of in other virtual reality projects, or even other games, I guess, is I'm hypersensitive to geometry intersecting other geometry when it shouldn't. So I was very careful to try to not have that happen too much in this project, but it was very difficult with these plants. Now, I am an architectural modeler, so all of this architecture is modeled using architectural modeling software. But for the Solarium, there was a need to have many plants, towels, sunglasses, things that are more organic in their modeling nature. I ended up using Blender. Now, I'm very new to Blender, and it was certainly an experience using Blender and trying to get it to do stuff that I wanted it to do. But in the end, I ended up buying a library of plants, and the plants don't necessarily exactly match what was shown on the TV show. If I turn on the screenshots once more, sorry, that's the slideshow. Let's turn on the screenshots. You can see the screenshots. The plants are much denser with their foliage than what I have. And also, my foliage doesn't exactly match the type of foliage that's there. But I did the best that I could. You can see this broadleaf plant there, and I've got a broadleaf plant there. And the rough height of the plants is sort of roughly the height that I have. But mine isn't as densely foliated as you see in the screenshots. And that is mainly because the library of plants that I have are all static. You know, they don't react to being next to a wall or being next to other plants. And with my aversion to having leaves intersect other leaves and walls and floors and rocks and furniture items and so on, I had to be very judicious about how I placed the plants. So I spent a lot of time placing the plants, scaling them, rotating them so that no leaves actually intersect anything as much as possible. Now, as it turns out, this is an example where I have done the worst job of intersecting leaves. And that's because of this glass sculpture that we see in the center here, and the fact that the planter bed is so narrow and I can't place the plants far enough apart to stop intersection. So, as it turns out, pretty much none of the plants intersect this glass sculpture except for this thing here, whatever it is. Its leaves intersect just there, which kind of bugs the hell out of me, but of the selection of plants that I had, I just couldn't find a good solution and have a reasonable amount of density of foliage. I'd have to move this plant out of the planter bed to make the leaves not intersect, and that just didn't work. And then if I made the plant small enough so that it didn't intersect, then it doesn't contribute much to the foliage density, so that didn't work either. So I tried very hard not to have intersecting leaves. There are a few occasions you'll see internally if you inspect it all. There's a few places where leaves intersect, but I'm quite happy with how I've managed to get it all to work and still look reasonably dense, but not as dense as I would have liked. Okay, so let's enter the Solarium. Here we are, Solarium area. We come in here, and the first thing you might notice is that this Solarium is, or the space is directly a repurposing of the command office in the main mission set, Commander Koenig's office. There are minor differences. In Commander Koenig's office, there's 2 doors there, and there's no doors on that bottom area. And over there on the left would be a window looking out over the moonscape in Commander Koenig's office. But in this office, those are minor changes. But the stairs and the panel layout and so on, or the ceiling layout particularly, is all identical. It's literally that set repurposed for this Solarium. There is one change that I did make to this Solarium, and that is I had to turn on the ceiling lights. In the TV show, for whatever reason, maybe to create a soothing mood, the ceiling lights were never turned. Oops, let me just go back. I'm sorry about that. I have to apologize in advance. My virtual reality headset is the HTC Vive Pro connected to my PC using SteamVR, and it relies on lighthouse tracking, which are these laser tracking units that are screwed into my walls. They're now 10 years old and they're starting to fail, and I lose tracking quite regularly. So you'll have to forgive me whenever I just seem to glitch and fly off into the distance or lose tracking. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. The ceiling in the Solarium was never illuminated, and I tried that initially, and the space was very dark and gloomy. So I did the compromise, and I turned on every second light, just as they are in the command office. Every second bay is turned on or off, and so that seemed to be a good compromise. I don't think I was going too far off canon to do that. But here we are looking at the environment as I finally have done it. So let's just turn around and look at all the little planter beds that are in the scene, the tanning beds, the little planter boxes with all those little stainless steel canisters placed all over the place, and various sunglasses. The sunglasses I tried to match as closely as I could to what was seen in the TV show. Again, I did buy the sunglasses online from a 3D modeling website. They weren't quite exact matches. There's another one over there, this one here, the brown ones. They weren't a perfect match, and I did spend a little bit of time with Blender trying to fix them up and change them and make them a little bit more similar to what was in the show. That was an experience, learning Blender for that. The headphones were hung off this little green clip in the show, and I just sort of placed them randomly in various areas. And then there's the planter beds spread out through the environment. But let's just momentarily talk about these starburst patterns on the wall. Now, if I bring the screenshots up again, you can see there are various photos of those textures, of those panels, but unfortunately they're all incredibly blurry. Like that is probably literally the best photo of that pattern down there. And it really wasn't good enough. And in fact, if you look at some of the other people's attempts at modeling this environment, they often will make up a texture, or they will take one of the textures and just repeat it, so there's no variation across the wall. I did a sort of a combination of that. I eventually did find a texture for every one of these panels, a unique texture for the top 4 and the bottom 4 panels. And unfortunately, they weren't all great. One of them was good, and the rest were blurry messes. And that applied for the bottom row and for the top row. So what I ended up doing in the end was this panel here was the best photograph that I had of that panel, and this panel was the best photo I had of this panel. And even that is quite blurry if you look at it close up. But then what I did was instead of just copying that across the top and copying that one across the bottom, I used a feature in Photoshop where because I had all of the 4 or 8 textures, in Photoshop, I decided that I would use the best detailed starburst pattern, but then I would take the version of that panel and apply its color scheme to the good version of the texture. So in Photoshop, you can take the color scheme of one photo and apply it to another photo, and it kind of works roughly interestingly. So that's what I did. So detail-wise, these are all the same textures, although I did mirror them just to make them a little bit different as it went across. But then I applied the appropriate color scheme to that texture for the panel. And so that way I achieved the difference that you see there, which roughly mirrors the difference that you may have seen in the television show. Like here, you can see this is predominantly orange. So that one in the corner is predominantly orange. This one is a little bit browner, which you can see there, and whereas the original was much more yellow and orange. So that was the approach that I took for these textures, and I'm pleased with how it turned out in the end. I mean, it's not literally the same textures that we used in the show, but I think it captures the spirit of what happened in a slightly better quality than what you would have gotten from just taking that as the image. So let me turn off the screenshots once more. And let's move on down through these planter beds and down through the stairs. So the planter beds were configured like that along the rear wall, and basically each bed had its own set of controls. So that was a set of controls on the left side of the bed, and then that was the controls on the right side of the bed. And then that control scheme was repeated down here with the same type of control on the left and the same type of controller on the right. And then also with the little green clip to hold the headphones for the person who's getting their vitamin D infusion. So if we just move around here, look at all the things that were done. We have our little towels. Now the towels were an exercise in their own right as well. Again, the towels are sort of this organic shape, which isn't ideal for architectural modeling. And so I ended up going online and I bought some towels. And in fact, I bought those towels, which are a stack of 3 of them. But for the other towels, I ended up, and again, I have to apologize. I accidentally turned 180 degrees. I'll just do it one more time. It's just a byproduct of accidentally touching the wrong button on the controller. So the towels, for these towels and the hanging towels that you see over there and the ones that are on the sunbaking beds, I actually did those in Blender using their cloth simulation, and they came out okay. Again, it took me a little bit of practice to get something reasonable and learning how Blender does things, which was incredibly frustrating because Blender, as admirable as the Blender project is, Blender is this 3D modeling software used for special games and television special effects. It does things in a totally non-industry standard way. And so when you work in Blender for a couple of days and then you come back to working in Unity, this game engine, or in my architectural modeling software, MicroStation, your muscle memory is totally screwed up. It's just really unfortunate that Blender does things so oppositely. But anyway, so this is a cloth simulation that I did to sit on that table. And I tried to do a cloth simulation with 3 towels on top of each other like this, and I couldn't get it to be stable. I couldn't get it to come out. It just kept exploding on me, and in the end, I just gave up and I went with the towels that I'd bought, which aren't great, but they're better than what I was getting. So that's my simulation, that's my cloth simulation, and then so are the ones on the beds. Now, if we look at, again, if we look at the screenshots, we can see here in this screenshot, there are the towels. Now, these towels, there's 6 of them, and it's a little bit different. There was no way I was going to be able to simulate that, so I ended up having to go with the towels that I'd bought over there. And here you can see that set of sunglasses, which is kind of similar to those ones. And I think, I wonder if we can see the other sunglasses. In fact, she's wearing those white and black sunglasses, which you can see her carrying there. And there's other photos of her lying on the bed, and she's got those glasses on. So those glasses, I think, even though they're not exactly the same, they certainly capture the spirit of what was used in the TV show. So, and then over here on this table here, I think there's this screenshot here where you can see there appears to be this little plastic caddy holding these yellow and orange thingies. Did you notice my controller's losing tracking? That's because I'm facing the wrong way. Let me just rotate. So that's the trying to represent what was visible in that screenshot over there. But the other thing that's evident in the screenshot is that these doors sometimes open, and you can see that open door policy here, here, and here. So through this door, you can see a hint of a chair, which is what I've got over there. And then we have our hanging towels. My hanging towel's a little bit bigger than that one because I took that size towel and hung it on the hook, and that's kind of how it turned out. But that sauna area, and in fact there is a sign on the door that says sauna. You don't see it in any of these photos, but it does exist. Yeah, that signage there and on the other door says sauna. This is all the information that we have of what's inside the sauna. Now, I had planned on putting some, I don't know, shower heads, steam, something or other in there, but in the end, let me just see. I just need to readjust myself so that I'm not losing tracking. So let's just go into the sauna. Now, in the photo, the sauna, the back wall of the sauna in that area was really quite close. It's a very narrow little corridor there, whereas the back wall through those doors was a little bit further away. So it's a little bit wider there and a little bit narrower there. But let's just go in there and have a look, see what it looks like. Like I said, I should eventually maybe add some shower heads or something in here and make it look more like a sauna. But for now, it's just what we see from the outside. And so from the outside, we definitely have these doors, these standard Space 1999 doors. And so I have them going through and terminating there and then having the panels in between, which I think kind of looks nice. I like the look of that. In fact, it's a nice little space. The color is soothing and it's a nice little space to be in. And then, you get to see through the doors, which you never saw from the actual television show, into the Solarium. So this is the Solarium and the usual comms post. The photos of these planter beds showed rocks in various configurations, and so that's kind of what I've put in there as well. You can see the sand. I have it sort of undulating and so on to take the shape of the effect of the rocks on them. Again, another example of cheating in the TV show. If I bring up the screenshots, you can see the various planter beds, and so my plants are roughly the same size, but obviously there's much more density of foliage in these things, which and they even have hanging plants, which I wasn't able to do. But they cheat because they just put even more plants in front of the camera, like this, for example. It would literally mean that there's plants right across the top of the stairs here, which doesn't happen, as you can see here, and as you can see in reverse shots like this one. You know, there are no plants at the top of the stairs. But because they can, and the director thought it would be a cool image, and you can even see here that these plants are actually plastic. It seems pretty obvious to me, which I guess for a TV show, of course, they would do that. So yeah, so they did take liberties with the plants, and I could not do such liberties in this virtual environment. So let's just turn that off. And now move on to the nuclear generating area. So if we come out of the door and walk down the corridor, as I explained before, these corridors all connect. And so this time, let's go down this corridor and look through here. One of the minor changes that I did, if I bring up the menu, the slideshow now displays on the video booths as well, which is a nice little touch, I think. So let's just turn those off. And now we are about to enter the nuclear generating area. Now, one of the things that I would have liked to have done in previous iterations of this project is to have the doors dynamically open and close as you approach them, or even as you press the door control panel. I couldn't do, well, I didn't want to do that in the past because this project I've always done static pre-calculated light baking, which calculates all of the subtle shadow interplay of surfaces on other surfaces and so on. And that precluded me having too many objects that were dynamic, because dynamic objects can't receive shadows in such an accurate, realistic way. And so if you look at the walls, which are static, and you can see there's nice shadowing across along the corner of the floor as it butts into the wall. But where the door is, you can see there's no shadowing, and that's because the door is dynamic and it will open. And so the light baking is done as though the door doesn't even exist, which is an unfortunate side effect of having dynamic objects. And then the other unfortunate side effect is that the door doesn't have any of this lovely shadowing in the recesses and so on that really makes the three-dimensional nature of the modeling pop. So, the door does have relief, three-dimensional relief in it, but it's just not so visible because of the dynamic nature. Having that as a downside, the plus side is that the door is now dynamic. So as you approach the door, I've got these trigger volumes near the door, and the door will slide open, and then as you leave the trigger volume, it will slide close. And I even managed to get the sound effects from the TV show, which is really cool. So here we go, approaching the door. Oh, I think that's so cool. And then if I back out again, the door will close. And in fact, if we turn on the screenshots, you can see here the door is wide open. And then if we go there, we get to see the screenshot. So let's just turn off the screenshots and walk in. And so here we are. The door is just closed behind us. Got the computer banks on the left, the office on the right. I'm calling this the observation room up there. And then we have these, I call these injectors, isotope injectors, which I'm sure is absolutely wrong name for them, but anyway. And then the vault door over there, obviously. So if we go over here, I have, let me just rotate myself back into the proper orientation so that I don't lose tracking. So let me rotate back and then look at the screenshots. So I have a number of screenshots peppered throughout this space, and probably this one I wanted to talk about first is there are a few shots that show what's happening through that door. So there's clearly a small space with this red stripe on the wall going somewhere, and there's even scenes in the episode where Victor Bergman goes through this door and goes somewhere in that direction and then comes back and talks to Commander Koenig. But we don't know what that is. So here I've accurately located the position of that far wall, but what happens in here is a little bit of a mystery. So what I've done is here we have these huge computer banks, and so I've put in these air ventilation grills behind the computer banks, and then there's an air ventilation exhaust grill or intake grill, whatever it is, there. And then because Victor Bergman comes in and out of this space, I've got a door that goes somewhere. So this space is a little bit of a mystery, but we do see this chair and we do see the wall. So that's that. Now the same applies here. We do see, I've got some screenshots that, that they've got really artistic with some of their screenshots. So let me just teleport up to the top there. Oh, it's really difficult. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Here we go. So if we move here, in this screenshot here, so the camera was literally up here somewhere, photographing down. You can see there in the top middle section of the photo, there's the hint of what happens beyond the wall, beyond that wall with the white panels. And that's all I ever found of that. So I interpreted that as being the same style of thing that's over there. And so I put the wall in the same position, and there's the same louvers behind this huge computer bank that we have here, with the same exhaust ventilation grill there, and then the same door that exits out of this space going somewhere, who knows where. So that is what informed what happens behind those doors. And then the rest of it is there's pretty good information for the rest, well, with the exception of the observation room. For the observation room, this is probably one of the best photos of the observation room. Clearly we have a door and this illuminated panel as we have there, and it clearly shows what's happening with the ceiling. And as with the Solarium, this ceiling was never illuminated, but if I had done that, this space again is very dark. And the TV show just takes so many liberties with creating a moody environment, but by then illuminating it with spotlights. So here you can see the ceiling is off, the lights, but there's this strong spotlight. This character here, look at how intense that spotlight is there. And then likewise, look how intense this shadow is coming from this direction. So, they're doing, key lighting on their main cast members, but the environment is not lit realistically. Whereas I had to turn on the ceiling light so that this wasn't a dark, dingy place. So that's one thing I had to do differently. But in terms of the modeling of the ceiling and all that sort of stuff, I think I got it pretty spot on. So I'm quite happy with how that came out. And that difference there that you see in the ceiling height, it's pretty much as it was in the TV show. So, but anyway, back to this observation room. You can see I've got those silver balls with that white cylindrical canister in the middle, and that kind of reflects what we have here and those balls there. But all of that other stuff, there's no way of knowing what that was. So I didn't even bother trying to work out what that is. And so I have and considering there's a door there, I have that as a functioning room, which then looks over this lower nuclear generating area space. Now, the other thing that you can see in this window is these pipes. So there's this beige pipe, and then there's a pair of metallic pipes there, and I sort of did it symmetrically. So I have those same beige pipes and metallic pipes running down the inside face of the window as well. So that would be the stuff that I had to invent myself. But now let's just have a look around the environment. So over here we have these little computer units, and so the detail on these computer units was a little bit vague in the photos from this episode. So if I turn on the screenshots once more, and I come down here, and I look here, you can see there's these. This is the style of photo that we had of those computer units. Very blurry, hard to see what's going on. You know, there's no way you could read what any of that says. But those same units are used in some of the medical areas on Moonbase Alpha. And so there were some slightly better photos from different episodes, not necessarily the ones dealing with the nuclear generating area. And that's what gave me the rest of the information to have this little horizontal section here with the stuff that happens there, and then a clear image of what all of this does and says. Now in those episodes, this is in the medical bay, so this had the name of the medical patient. Whereas for the nuclear generating area, I did make up this writing, and I said isotope injector 11, and then this one says injector 12. And that is because over here we have 11 and 12, and so I imagined that this radon was the isotope that was being injected. Now, here in this photo here, you can see there is a vague indication of some writing on that metal disc, and even in this photo, there is an indication of some kind of writing on that metal disc. Obviously, I can't tell what it is, so I sort of made up what I made up. But here you can see the standard warning text that they have all over the eagle interior and everywhere. It's just repeated over and over again. Likewise with this letter set, it's just repeated over and over again. And if we look at it closely, that's what I've got there, and then this is what I have there. And then that's the same text that you see there. And Zorif is standing in the way, but that text that I just showed next to the fire extinguisher is there. Oh, actually, you can make it out there. There it is. And so these numbers 16, 4, and F, whatever that refers to, and then the 1 and the 3 up there. There's also I don't know, you can see 2, 1, and 16 up there. I don't happen to have any of those screenshots, but there are plenty of other screenshots that show hints of that. So that's a pretty accurate representation of what is up there as well. But anyway, so let's just turn off the screenshots and just walk around the environment. So as I was saying, so this is the computer unit here in the corner. Now these desks are taken directly from main mission set. In main mission, we've got 6 of these desks, and then one of that one, which is the one that Kano uses. And so in this environment, we've got 6 of them as well. We've got 2 there, 2 there, and then 2 inside the office, and then including Kano's desk over there. And they are exactly the ones from main mission. And in fact, I was able to identify them and get exactly the right one in exactly the right spot all through this environment. So, so that's those desks, and then the chairs, as again taken directly from main mission. These panels are all again from main mission and from the computer room. You know, this is definitely from main mission. You've seen that before. And in fact, there's one of them even over there. The panel layouts that I have here and here and there, I think I've got that all pretty accurately done. So for instance, let's have a look at the screenshots. I mean, over here we have our liquid dispenser. Now, thanks to Andrea from Italy, he every now and again sends me some really cool photos. So for instance, he sent me some nice photos of the moon buggy at one point. And he also sent me a higher resolution image of the logo on this spacer matte liquid dispenser. So I think I have now finally got an accurate version of that logo. So, I mean, it's a minor thing, but I'm really chuffed to be able to get that right. Vita Seed versus Veta Seed. In the TV show, they had both spellings, V-I-T and then also V-E-T. I ended up going with that spelling. But like I was saying, the panels, I think, are a pretty good match, down to the fact that even the shape of the squiggles is the same as what was on the TV show. And those are just, again, exactly taken from the main mission set. On this side of the computer panel, there was never any imagery showing what happens there, so I just had to make up what might be there. The images on the TV screens, again, are taken from the TV show, so there's sort of a squiggly thing that you see. In fact, I think that squiggly thing is a better shot there. So that's that. Those 4 dials are there, and then that thing is taken from another shot, which I don't think I have an example of here in these screenshots, but it does exist. And so I just sort of, and that they were sort of placed at all different screens at different times. So in here we have these little slide out drawer things. And so that obviously has a certain depth, and so that then extends. If we look in here, those things would extend behind this wall into that space there. And in fact, later on I'll show you the diorama of these new environments, and you'll see from above the relationship of all the rooms and the spaces. So here we have the area next to the office. And now and then again, looking into the office, you can see I've matched all the panels as they were. You can look at the shape of that squiggle and the shape of the squiggle that I have over there. They all match. This panel here is one of the few panels that was new to this environment. I haven't come across this one in main mission or even the interior of the Eagle passenger pod, or even in the computer room. So that's a unique panel. Those panels on the right are visible, I think, in other shots, such as this one and potentially some others. And again, I've sort of matched quite accurately what was happening there. You can see there's the red button keyboard thingy. So now let's just, let's just finish looking at these screenshots. So here's the screenshot of the vault door, which clearly shows the thickness of the door and how the door attaches to the hinge points. Now, interestingly, this door, there's a hinge point there and there, but there's also a hinge point there and there. So the door actually has double hinges, which then allows the actual conical shaped door itself, instead of to come out like a normal hinge, the door can actually come out parallel and then turn. And that's because of this hinge layout. And in fact, the hinges, if we go up here, and then I go here, you can see on top of the vault door, there's this slotted recess, which is where the hinge actually is allowed to slide through there, which allows, if I turn off this, oops, my control has gone crazy. I was going to say, if we teleport back up there and we look down, you can see I've got that same slotted thing for the hinge, so that the door can, so that the cylindrical door can come out and then hinge and then slide and just be out of the way generally. All right. So let's just now enter the office space. Now, again, like I said before, this door is it's a unique door, and I wanted to feature the door instead of having it permanently open, which meant that I made it so that this door would open as you approach it. So there's a volume that detects your presence near the door, and once you are close enough, the door will open. And because the door is dynamic, it's not using the pre-baked lighting, and therefore the lighting on that door does not match the lighting on the static wall panels, which I really don't like, but at the same time I like the fact that the door is dynamic, so I just had to live with the compromise. And so as we get close, let's just listen to the door. It's a really cool sound. And then if we go back inside, you can see that door, the color matching is so terrible. I tried so many different things. Unity has this concept called light probes, which samples the lighting for dynamic objects such as this door, but I just could not get it to behave and to give me a result that I liked. And in fact, this is even worse than what I had it during my intermediate builds. But anyway, here we are in the office, and so this is repurposed from the main mission set, and along with the desk, and along with this typewriter keyboard thingy. But what's new is this white trolley frame thing, and that's the same frame that we have over here. And this object is, we see this in the medical area a lot. But if we go back outside and turn on the screenshots, you can see that object is clearly represented there. And then if we look in here, we can see, we don't see that object, but we do see that desk with that dial, which is again from the main mission set. So much stuff is just taken from the main mission set. On some levels, it made it easier modeling this space, but in general, this space did take me a while to get the proper dimensions and sizes. But ultimately, again, I'm really happy with the dimensions that I've got. I think they're really quite accurate. So let's now go back into the office, and again, these clipboards. There were various shots of these clipboards, and so I was able to get them relatively accurate, although the nature of that was a little bit blurry. I did manage to update this texture. This is a texture that I used in the main mission set, but having done the research for this environment, I saw that they used a different font up here, which I updated for the Moonbase Alpha. So yeah, so this is from the medical area, but here it is in the office of the nuclear generating area. And there were different variations of this. I went with this one because there was the best photos of this to work with. And then over there in the corner, there was no imagery of that corner, so I just put those little containers there. And then over here, all we could see is that. I certainly couldn't see that there was a cup there, but I put one in with some steam. And then all this paperwork. This panel here is directly from the command office, the rear wall in the command office, Commander Koenig's office, is this panel. Although in Commander Koenig's office, this is a different panel to what we see here. But the other stuff is the same. It's just repurposed again from the command office. And then I just added these little elements just to fill out the space a little bit. So yeah, so this little office here works well. I like it. I like how it's turned out. And probably one of the last few things I need to mention is if we see this photo here, on the wall there's a pin board. You can see it there, and I think you can even see some of it there. And on that pin board, there's clearly paperwork with some random writing on it, which, you know, that's the best we have. So obviously we don't know what it said. So I ended up finding online some contemporary articles about Space 1999, Oops, let's just open the door again. And I found this article here called Space 1999 Season Guide. And it was just perfect. There was 8 pages, which is exactly what I needed. The top bit talks about the making of the TV show, and then the bottom bit talks about each and every one of the episodes in Season 1. So episode guide Season 1. And so there's a little synopsis for every episode. I thought it was a nice little nod, breaking the fourth wall, so to speak. Oops. Yeah, so I quite like that. That's cool. So we've sort of looked around the ground floor area. Now let me just come up here and look from above. We have those vents, and then we have these little valve thingies. In the photos from this episode, the nuclear generating area, this is the type of quality of image that I had to work with. And here, in fact, you can see they've got an elongated silver central one, whereas on that one, I think they don't even have anything at all. If I actually found some additional information regarding those objects in the pilot episode. So these were used in the pilot episode, the breakaway episode, where on the nuclear waste area, outside on the moon. In the nuclear waste area, these objects are actually turned up with the cone facing upwards. And in some of those photos, there was much better images of what was happening up here. So the breakaway episode helped me model some of this stuff better than what I saw from these photos. But now let's just turn that off again, and let's come up here to this level and go into the observation room. Now in the observation room, I have added this computer wall, which you don't really see from below, and so I made that up. But here are those silver balls and that central cylindrical container. In the screenshot that you see from below, this container is visible through the window, and so to make this container visible through the window, I had to raise it somehow. And there's no indication that there's even a table in here, but since I already had this table from the corridor, this elliptical table, it seemed to fit just perfectly in this curved front wall section. So I put in the elliptical table with the chair, and then I just made up that yellow thing to hold up the cylindrical container so that it's visible through the windows outside. So this is how I imagined the inside of that observation room to look like, and you can see those beige coloured pipework and then the metallic pipework that was visible in that photo. And then if we look out through the windows, we see what's below. And again, this is a shot that wasn't exactly reproduced in the TV show, but here you see it for the first time in VR. Looking down at the office. So you can see that little white frame trolley thing. That was actually visible in one of the photos, which I'll show you in a second. But before I do, consider this window here, the outside window. I've never attempted to model the outside moon or the moon base outside, so it's all very generic. It's just meant to be stuff in the distance. So I'm not 100%, well, I'm not at all pleased with the quality of my outside environment. Although I do like the sky and the twinkling stars, no matter what other people say. But looking out of this window, you do see how I've had to just put in some ceiling above the office. And yeah, it doesn't look great, but it is what it is. Now, what was I going to show? I was going to show something from below. Oh, that's right, the screenshot. So in the screenshot, if I turn on the screenshots, then if I go back to there, I have totally forgotten what I was going to show. Oh, that's right. Yes, yes. That white frame trolley over there, you can clearly see that it is there in the corner, and that's where, and that keyboard is clearly visible. So I'm very sure I've got that done accurately. And then also this wall here, it's pretty much, this is the only photo that I have of what's happening on that wall. So that white side wall with that central one there. The computer bank behind that trolley is a little bit, I may have made that up, but it's unclear what's happening there. But the location of that red wall is exactly that. So that interior office is 3 bays deep, even though it's a little bit vague here. If we try to line up everything, yeah, it's quite accurate. All right, so let's turn off the screenshots and jump down to the bottom. So in the TV show, that window was always just this blacked out thing, which kind of implied space. But there was never indication of stars or anything like that. And in fact, in the TV show, there's at one point when the alien presence comes to Moonbase Alpha, it comes via this window. There's this blue orb that appears and comes towards us. Now, I didn't do that blue orb, but I did put the blue planet in homage to that blue orb. And then I added the twinkling stars and the night sky. And then for the hell of it, I added the nebula over there as well, because I could. And they, in the TV show, never showed actual stars, so I felt I could do what I wanted. So that's that. And so that's the 2 new environments all explored. And now let's have a look at the other change to the project. So the main mission is barely changed. The passenger pods have not changed. The launch pads have not changed, but the diorama did. So let's just go to that. Now, what has changed in the diorama, you say? It all looks the same as last time. In fact, it is very similar, but what I've added is the additional spaces to the diorama. So we have our main mission set as before, and then we can, when you pick up this main mission, when you pick up these dioramas, it is kind of, the sun's coming from that direction, so it kind of works better if you just turn around and let the sun illuminate the diorama for you. So this is the main mission set, and so this is the command office, which you will see is so similar to the Solarium. Well, it's exactly, it is the Solarium, it was just repurposed. But just notice that there's a convex corner here, whereas in the Solarium it's a concave corner. And then in the Solarium, these doors do not exist, but they do exist there, there, and there, and there, and the windows do not, but then there's the sauna that goes out here. So that's the, so we already know about that. We already know about the this corridor, and again, this corridor, well, actually, this section of the corridor is exactly the corridor that's in front of the Solarium. So the Solarium would go off in this direction through that door. But this is the corridor in the main mission set, which is the exact same corridor in the new set, the Solarium set. The passenger pod over there, and then the computer X5 pod over there. And then if we click on the nuclear generator, you'll notice that this plan layout will change and the nuclear generator drops into position. So if I just grab the nuclear generator for a moment and put that there, so this is the layout that I have for this new environment, the facilities environment that I'm calling it. So if you go to the menu, location, facilities, that's it. So that was the corridor. That is the same as command, with the door going into the Solarium, which is the same as the command office. And then this is how I've connected the computer room corridor and then the computer room off that. That's the nuclear generating area corridor, and then this is what I made up to connect it to the Solarium corridor. And then obviously we go into the computer room there with the observation platform up there and the office down there. So that is the nuclear generating area. And then if we just grab that, and then we can look at the little cute model of the nuclear generating area with the little offshoot rooms, and then all of the computer banks and the furniture and all that stuff. I just love looking at these dioramas in this sort of scaled down version. It's so cute. So that would be the nuclear generating area. So then the facilities corridor is that one. And so again, you get a feel for what the corridors are doing and how I've connected them. But the cutest thing is this little planter bed. Oops, my tracking has just gone a bit crazy. So that's the corridor. Just throw that. In fact, what we can do is if we throw that away, what will happen when it drops down below 20 meters, below the floor level, it'll reappear and fall right into position. So that's one way to reset the position of these dioramas. You may remember that in the menu there is this respawn button. That no longer works with these dioramas. I had all sorts of problems trying to get that working. I couldn't in the end and I just gave up. So this respawn does not respawn the position of the dioramas, but it does respawn the position of all of this stuff. So if I press respawn, you see it all respawns. But the if I put that there and I press respawn, you see it hasn't respawned, but all the other stuff does. So, okay, so respawn doesn't work on these items. Go to the computer room, and if we do that, there it is. And again, the computer room is, you've already seen it from before, except that now it has an orange floor. But also now you see the correct corridor coming off the computer room, and then that goes off towards the Solarium, as I've indicated there. And then the computer room has those, or the corridor, sorry, has those video booths with the comms posts in place. So that is that, and then the Solarium. There it is. And so there you can see the relationship of the sauna to the Solarium, and then how the Solarium mimics the command office in layout, with the concave corners rather than the convex ones. But again, it's so cute seeing this little model with all of the detail, all of the plants, the towels. So that was the addition to the diorama. Yeah, we can go back and have a look at. So this top row is this plan, and then the bottom row is that plan, and you can just toggle between. Also, these buttons are repeated in the menu. So if I click on the, let's say, computer room, you can see computer room also highlights, and then the computer room reappears. Or if we go to nuclear generator, the nuclear generator also highlights, and there it is. Go. And there it is. So that is the project thus far. Thanks everybody for joining in on the journey, and we'll just have to see what comes next. I am planning on working on a different project. I'm very excited about working on a virtual reality snooker game, which will be a real challenge for me because I'm not a coder, and so I will be relying on either Claude or Gemini to help me with the physics code for snooker, but all of the 3D modeling and interactions and stuff I will be doing myself in Unity. So I will be pretty much focused on that, and so any updates to this project may be a while longer, but you never know. Anyway, thank you all, and I'll see you next time. Bye.